Well, this is our Heart-Centered Entrepreneurs Conversations, Heart-Centered Conversations for Entrepreneurs. And we've got with us today Connie Livingston. And Connie is an expert on bringing self-care into your business and making sure that that's an important part. And I think all three of us here present visually know the importance of self-care. Some of us kind of struggle with it a little bit more than others, but it's all really important. And Gemma, you had some good questions to kind of start out with.
Yes, I kind of would like to start off with what happens when you don't do self-care, and why is it really, really important? Like, we know it's important, but I think sometimes we don't think about why. So, yeah.
That's a great question. So you feel lousy. You have low energy if you're not practicing self-care. You're not thinking clearly. And if you're not thinking clearly, you can't make good decisions. Your communication isn't good with other people in your business and otherwise. We've all had periods where we know we're supposed to practice self-care and we're not doing it, right? Something like, I remember actually last summer about this time, I actually broke my kneecap, and I was out of commission on crutches for about 6 to 8 weeks, and it reconfigured my whole schedule, right? And so I had to rethink, so what am I going to do for self-care? Because I can't swim in the pool every morning anymore, right? Like, it looked really different. So stuff like that comes up where we're not practicing good self-care, and we have to kind of reconfigure what that looks like. So a lot of the impact in terms of business is that we don't have that high energy. We don't have, and businesses are such complex animals, right? And so we don't have the bandwidth to make the good decisions, to, like, when 5 things are coming at you at once, what thing do I work on? How do I negotiate this thing with a certain partner that I'm working with? How do I help this client who just threw me this curveball? And it doesn't feel good.
Yeah. So you need that. I'm interested, like, in the way you call it, bandwidth, so that zone of kind of flexibility, or zone of buffer kind of zone, so you can deal with curveballs and deal with unexpected kind of things that come up in life, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think an example would be like, one act of self-care that's, like, so important is getting enough sleep. And I think when we don't get enough sleep, right, which is a lot of us, right? Like, most people, when I give talks, like 80% of the people in the room kind of consistently say, they're not getting enough sleep. It feels like you're in your car driving, right? And going about your day, and it's raining out or it's foggy, and you have no windshield wipers, right? There's just like this fog, and you can't see clearly, and you're not functioning as well. You're not moving down that path as easily as you could be.
So it's kind of like making it harder for ourselves in a way. Like, when we don't do self-care, it's like, the degree of difficulty in life becomes higher.
Where it became really obvious to me was, and we talked a little bit about this a moment ago, before we started recording. But when I was back in corporate and working in scene hours, and I really didn't have any time for self-care, that I noticed that I wasn't listening to myself. I mean, I wasn't, paying attention to my moods or my, how I was responding to other people, or, just my daily interactions. Mm-hmm. And it actually took people to, kind of comment on it. I just wasn't very self-aware, because I wasn't giving myself the care that I needed to be giving. And I think, especially in life in general, but in business, I think it's really important to be self-aware, to know, what's working and what's not working. And so you need to give yourself that time and that space to create.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I actually, your story reminds me of a client who I worked with over the last 6 months or so, who was an HR consultant and he had a corporate job, and he just, I forget what the reason was, but he consistently did not get enough sleep for, I don't know, I think 6 to 9 months. He just wasn't getting enough sleep. And he actually, it affected his work, his ability to do his work and to, like you were just saying, like function, you know, in a productive way with his coworkers. And it affected his work so badly that it actually, he got fired because he thinks a lot of that was because he didn't get enough sleep. And so, none of this is rocket science, and it's not very sexy. You know, it's just like, you know, try to go to bed at the same time every night, get up at the same time, and you know, it actually cuts a lot of the drama out for us. You know, we don't get fired. We are actually able to function. We feel good, and like Steve, you were just saying, like we can connect to our instincts, our intuition, our gut about, you know, what the right next step is. We can kind of hear that, you know, guidance that we get, however that seems to come to us. So it's like, it is such a game changer. It's so simple, and such a, you know, really packs quite a punch.
Right, and the kind of the catch-22 is that we think that we need to be spending so much time on external stuff, right? You know, we need to be focusing on, you know, creating our business or the next sale or the next project or whatever it may be, that you know, all of our energy is spent outside of ourselves, and it works in the short term. You know, we get projects done, we get whatever, but in the long term, just like your client was experienced, you know, in the long term, it doesn't work. You know, we don't oftentimes, at least I know for myself, that I don't oftentimes see the immediate effects of not giving myself self-care, but I do see the long-term effects and how that impacts, you know, pretty much every area of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think that I think part of what happens is that, you know, those voices come up in our head. You know, we all are pretty familiar with them, and when we're trying to do good things, when we're trying to do the work that we're meant to do, when we're trying to start that business that's going to make the world a better place, and we're trying to be there for our clients, and part of the foundation that we're creating so that we can come from that place is that really strong foundation of self-care. You know, I mean, how many times, you know, do we go to the gym? Like, Steve, this could be you, right? Like, before we were on live, you were talking about how you're working like, what, 8 in the morning till 11 o'clock at night. So I can just see you taking a break to go to the gym in the middle of the day, and your head's just going, wait, I've got all those projects I've got to get back to, and I'm not going to get X, Y, and Z done, right? So part of it is managing, and actually this could be an act of self-care, is just managing all that, you know, that monkey mind stuff, that stuff going on in our heads. And just, you know, because it's all that negative stuff that comes up in our heads that pulls us off our path, right? I mean, the work I do is helping people do the work or have a business that really lights them up, the work that they're really meant to do. And half the time I spend with my clients is, okay, how do we get you back on center and away from those distractions? And I do think all those, you know, voices in our head, whether it's don't do the self-care, don't go to the gym, don't take that swim, don't go for the run because you don't have time for it, right? A lot of that is all those things that just distract us and keep us from doing the work that we really want to be doing and making the world a better place.
Yeah, you know, the interesting thing too, about an hour and a half ago, I went on one of I go walking. That's my main form of aerobic exercise. I also do yoga, but walking is my thing that I do to get outside. And it's really interesting that I actually get more done not working. I mean, I have insights and, you know, things just happen when I'm out walking when it's not technically working. But I have to allow myself that space in order to do that, and realize that, you know, that I will get more done by quote unquote not working.
Yeah, you get those inspired ideas, right? You get outside, you get into the fresh air, you're moving your body. Yeah, like those, I mean, it's when we're not kind of chugging away, right, mentally at a project or a problem we're trying to solve, that those ideas just come to us. You know, they just kind of land in our brain. So that would be something to tell yourself, right? Like, yeah, I'm going to go out for this walk because actually I'm working when I'm walking because I get all these great ideas.
Right. And I like what you posted in your Facebook group, and remind everybody what that group is so that they can join it. I know the words. I don't know what the order is, though.
Yeah, it's passion and purpose, create a career you love.
Okay. So you posted yesterday about how self-care is actually that if you have a tough time making room for it in your business, to consider it a form of marketing. And I really like that idea. And part of the reason I like it is, well, one, it gives purpose to, you know, taking care of yourself, which in a way is really sad that we have to you know, give ourselves permission to take care of ourselves. But the other side is that, in my mind, marketing is really about creating relationships. You know, and if you're not able to be there fully for people, you know, then you're missing out on half the equation of, you know, that relationship. And so, for example, when I'm not there for my wife or for my kids, you know, then the relationship suffers. And so I think self-care really literally is a part of our marketing equation, that, you know, when we make time for ourselves, we also make time for others, because we're enabling us to have more of us present in that relationship.
Yeah, I think that's really true. So, and it may be helpful just for people who are listening. I'll just kind of rattle off, if it's okay, I'll just rattle off some ideas that I recommend people practice on a daily basis.
Absolutely, yes.
So the big one we already talked about was like getting enough sleep, right? And also just eating really healthy food, you know, organic if possible, lots of fruits and vegetables, you know, drinking tons of water throughout the day, pure water. You know, people who are, you know, kind of in the helping professions, coaches and healers, and people who, you know, kind of have value-based businesses, they're often very sensitive people. And so drinking coffee and tea and all that caffeinated stuff and non-natural food can really have a huge effect. You know, so it's those basic things, getting, like you mentioned, going outside, getting outside. I mean, and you kind of did two things at once there that I recommend. You know, it's getting exercise every day, which gives you lots of energy and just feels really good. And then getting outside is really important, I think, on a regular basis. And I also think you actually mentioned this too as well a second ago, Steve, is connecting with family and friends, like especially over a meal, is a great way to just have that act of self-care on a regular basis. You know, or if you have a pet, I mean, that's considered a loved one for many people, of course.
Right.
Yeah, so those are the big ones, and so we've kind of touched on those. And it, you know, I mean, I think the easiest way to implement them, I mentioned in my book, I mentioned 10 different daily practices, but it's like, just, you know, maybe people who are listening, you know, I just rattled off a few and we've just mentioned quite a few of them. You know, what one do you want to add that's just non-negotiable, that you want to just add to your schedule, you know, over the next week? Mm-hmm. And then you just slowly add different ones on, and then, you know, just notice what works, and you know, it's all about just doing that consistent action, you know, noticing what works, what feels really good. And then, you know, I don't know, it just, you know, there's just so much going on, you know, in the world right now. There's so much going on for all of us. I think personally, a lot of us are going through a lot of major life transitions. A lot of us have our own businesses, which are their own kind of interesting dynamic. And so practicing that self-care is, you know, it really just evens out the turbulence. when stuff comes up, it just makes it easier to manage stuff, and we all have things that get thrown at us every day, right? And so it's that consistent schedule. It's kind of something that you can kind of latch on to, that consistent schedule, keeping your energy high, and doing those like self-loving things. That's really what self-care is, right?
Right. Yeah.
I have a question about like how do you, because I'm really bad at consistency with things.
Mm-hmm.
So like I'm just wondering, how do you just keep doing it? Because I mean that might sound like a really basic question. Maybe I just have no self-discipline, but that's my main question. Like, how do you keep doing it?
Yeah. So, I mean, different personalities are different. There are some people that are really good at details, and they really love, like, and I happen to have that personality. I can envision, okay, this is the self-care I want to do. This is the goal that I have around my business, and self-care is part of that. And then I also like the implementation part, the actual small steps. Not everybody really is good with the small steps. Steve and I have talked about this. Like, people who are really creative, you're the big picture people, right? You're meant to be the visionaries and to think of the big ideas and then, launch them and let somebody else do the implementation. So by the same token, if you're that kind of person, you're more creative and you're the big picture person and you're not great at details, you need someone who's detail oriented to kind of nudge you and keep you on track. So that could be, a partner. It could be, a coach of some kind. There are any number of ways that you can kind of keep on track. And then the other thing we haven't really mentioned is, the consistency it takes work, right? Like, you wake up in the morning, like I have mornings, I usually go for a swim every morning, in the morning, like at 6. And, there are a lot of days when I don't feel like jumping in the pool. I'm just like exhausted. And I make myself do it anyway. And I always get those benefits. But then, it's rewarding ourselves too, right? Because it's not always easy to remember to do all these things and to actually carry it through. It's that consistency that we all struggle with. So, Jim, I don't know, did that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, I think knowing that you don't have to feel like it, but you can still do it is helpful. Because, sometimes it's like, I don't feel like it, I just won't do it. But that's not required, because that long term it's going to be good for you. It's, in your interest to do it. So, yeah, for sure.
And so,
sorry.
2 things that I've learned, Gemma, along those lines is one, infinite mercy for myself. If I'm not, as I'm not great at, I kind of struggle with the details. I'm much more the creative mindset. And so 2 things that I have done is, one, I allow myself to scatter the things that I do throughout the day. So like, I started out this morning doing more cerebral stuff, like reading and things like that. But then about 11 o'clock, I made time to do some yoga. And then a couple hours later, I made time to go for a walk. And it wasn't like, I was like really structured, but it's like I've got things on my kind of checklist that I know are important that I do each day. And so by giving myself more flexibility, and then the other piece is just, forgiving myself when I don't, do everything. When I do my best effort, but I know I'm not perfect, and I know I'm not, I don't always do the things that I know I need to do.
Sure.
So giving myself mercy and permission and flexibility and not feeling like I have to do it in some certain way. I've always admired people who are more morning people, but I'm definitely more of a night owl. And I've had to learn to give myself permission to be that way and not feel like I have to be somebody else in order for me to be okay. But it's been a really long learning process.
Yeah. I wanted to ask about prioritizing self-care because I feel like especially for women, you know, it can feel like, oh, I'm being selfish if I'm looking after myself. You know, like there's that unconscious kind of thing, like, oh, it's selfish to do what I want to do or to look after myself because I have a family or I have a husband that I, you know, need to, I don't know, cook meals for. I don't know what, I don't know. I'm not married, so I'm not quite sure how it works. But you know what I'm getting at. You know what I'm getting at with this question, like the idea of it being selfish to look after oneself.
So the question is it how do you prioritize? I'm not clear. Just restate the question for me.
I just wanted to raise the question of, because I feel like there's this kind of unconscious thought that comes to people when they think about doing something good for themselves. Is it selfish? Let's just say it as a question. Is it selfish to look after yourself?
Well, I guess it'll be a little flip. I mean, it is selfish, right? And I guess, and I realize that's negative, right? It can be kind of a negative thing to be kind of selfish. But I mean, I guess from my point of view, we need to really be first before and take care of ourselves first. It's kind of like what Steve talked about. Like, I'm not going to be present with my wife or my kids if I'm like not taking care of myself, or if I'm really stressed out. And because actually that's something we haven't mentioned, that self-care has a lot to do with helping us manage stress. So anything, I mean, I believe that anything that we do for ourselves that's good for us, right, enables us to be, you know, to put all that stress or those worries aside and be totally present for either our clients or our families or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think that whole selfish thing, I think it's a great question. I think when that voice comes up in our head, I think that's one of those noisy voices that's saying you shouldn't be doing this. You should be like, you know, making the beds or cooking dinner or doing something for somebody else, right? I mean, and we all have our kind of Achilles heel, and those little voices just know exactly how to push our buttons.
Yeah.
You know, and that's one of the reasons I've been working so hard, because I feel like, you know, I need to be giving and taking care of my family and all that, you know, that's the thing I need to be doing. But my family, the feedback I'm getting back from my family is, wait a minute, you're not stopping to, one, spend time with us, and underlying that is I'm not stopping to allow time for myself either. And so I'm not setting up appropriate boundaries with my work in order to, one, meet my needs, but also in doing so meet the needs and desires of my family. So it's, and that was one thing that I learned too in going through my recovery from severe depression, was that my number one job literally was to take care of myself, to get through that, you know, being really not well, that in order for me to be here for my family, in some ways literally, that I had to take care of myself first. Again, a hard lesson for me to learn, but
well,
I did learn.
And you're also, you know, you're being a role model for other people, right? Like you're, you know, because I mean, I've experienced depression as well. And, you know, it's really a call for us to put ourselves first, and, you know, in really simple terms. And I think, you know, you're a great role model to other entrepreneurs, to your clients. And I can tell you how many clients I have, because, you know, I help people who are really miserable in their jobs. And, you know, my tagline is I help people love Mondays. And so I have a lot of clients who do not love Mondays. And most of them are having some health issues connected to it. That's really, really common. And I'd say at least 50% of those people who are unhappy in their work are either experiencing anxiety or some kind of depression. And so being that role model like you left your corporate job, right? So I wonder how many other people at the company that you were working for were also struggling and trying to figure out how to be happy within this really constrained atmosphere, perhaps. And so you were a role model for other people because you said you were first and you were going to go handle this and you were going to go do what you really wanted to do, this creative person that you are. And so you're a model for other people. You're a model for your clients. Like I know I'm a model for my clients. They come to me and they're depressed and they look at me and they see that I've regained my health, and I teach them how I did that. And so it's like a beacon that each of us needs that, right? We need other people to look up to who are already where we want to be, so that we know it's possible and we want to know kind of how they got there. And then the other thing, which is not really career related, but kind of a larger frame on it, is that you were a great role model. Oh, looks like there's some kind of noise. So you're a great role model.
There's a helicopter flying.
Okay. So you're a great role model for your kids, right? Because you said, this job isn't working for me and I'm going to go start my own business. And, the way we handle stress, the way we take care of ourselves, the way we do our self-care, the way we make decisions, what we do, we take those leaps of faith and we quit our job. Those are just we're great role models for, people that we don't even probably are aware of, right?
Yeah. And one of the things that you talk about, that you talked in your presentation last week about, was that we all have a purpose. We all have a, kind of a calling in life, and in order for me to actually start listening to that, I had to start, give myself self-care and to start kind of asking that question. And I think it's, for me, business is a part of my life. It's not just something that I do. It's not just a way of making money or to get, whatever things I want, but it's a way for me to be who I am. And in order for me to be who I am, I also need to be taking care of who I am. So it's the whole package, not just piece of it.
Yeah, totally. And I think, getting to that conversation about health issues, I think that as we're practicing a really good self-care, which could mean leaving that job, right? I know it was for me. Up until 7 years ago, I was actually a broker in a financial services firm. And the values of the people I worked with and the environment and the company were totally out of alignment with my personal values. And so that's how I got depressed, because I was leaving the real Connie at home. And and then I totally crashed and burned, like big time, and had to leave my job and couldn't work for several months. And so it's those it's those acts of self-care, those decisions that we make. It's the, those crises that happen. And I believe, I'm not a health professional, but from my personal experience and the experience of my clients, is that, when we're not doing the work we're meant to do, then that passion that we have, that fire, whatever it is that we're being called to do, that's actually getting depressed, right? So literally, you get depressed because you're not expressing who you really are. And so when you, like Steve, you probably feel great, right? You feel much better because you're being this creative person. If you want to work from 8 in the morning till 11 at night, you can, and you want to, right? And so you're going to be this really creative, happy, healthy person. And it's because you're doing the work that you're meant to do. And I just, kind of on a larger scale, like 80% of Americans are dragging themselves to a job each day. It's not working for them. Like at least 80%. I think the New York Times a couple of months ago, I saw that the number was more than 90% now. And so people are feeling this real inner conflict about, well, I need to support my family. I need to pay the bills. But most of us grew up with this paradigm where we had parents who were going to a job each day that they just didn't necessarily like, right? They just went to work, they punched the clock, they got, the paycheck so that they could feed us, that kind of thing. And what I believe is happening is that most of us are really unhappy in our work because just in terms of the evolution of, whether it's the planet or who we are as people, that we are really all being called to do the work that we're meant to do. So a lot of us have that real inner conflict between the old paradigm that we grew up with and what we're being called to do now and really go for the work that we're meant to do. And so that's kind of the conflict that's happening right now. And so, like Steve, I mean, you're like a model, and hopefully I'm a model as well, and Gemma, you as well, like doing the work that we're meant to do and showing other people that it's really possible and how that can just really transform your life in a major way.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, I think part of self-care is really doing the work that we feel driven to do. One of my beliefs regarding depression is that it comes up when we're out of alignment with, with ourselves or with the people that we're working with or the world in general or whatever. And that if we don't listen to that, if we don't give ourselves a self-care as far as living the life that we want to be living, that we feel driven to be living, that one, we're doing a disservice to ourselves, but we're also doing a disservice to the people around us. When I come across unhappy people, my first thought is that, they're not being who they are really meant to be. Because I think all of us have the access and really have the desire to be happy. But when we let things get in our way, whether that be, not taking care of ourselves, whether that's through exercise or sleep or, diet or the work that we're doing, then we're really, in the long run, doing a disservice to the people or everybody. Whereas when we're doing work and taking care of ourselves in all those different areas, then we're making the world a better place.
Yeah, no, for sure. So. And the way I think about it in terms of doing the work that we're meant to do is that, like just think about who your favorite musician is. I grew up in the 60s, so Motown was a big deal. Like in the 60s was a really difficult time in this country, right? And Motown music was like literally, I think, the soundtrack to a lot of people's lives and really nurtured people in a way that they really needed. So if you think about, the founder of Motown, Berry Gordy, right? He went out on his own and started this thing that had never been created. And so, talk about a creator, right? And so what if he had said, okay, I'm not going to do the work that I'm meant to do. I'm going to stay over here and be safe and do what I have been doing. So just think of the millions and millions of lives that wouldn't have been touched in quite the same way, whose lives could have been improved in quite the same way. Berry Gordy had decided, for instance, that he wasn't going to go down that path. And so we, that's kind of a large scale example, but we each have that. I have clients who literally, yes, they could have gotten helped by other people, but we tend to draw to us the clients who we are best matched to work with. And it's that really beautiful relationship that you have working with that person. I'm sure both of you have that similar examples where just I can remember my first client was a woman who was a college professor who had 3 kids, and she's really good at what she was doing, but she just really, work was not working for her, and what she wanted to do was actually quit her job and have another child and be a mom and kind of do her own thing. And so I know that she and I kind of connected at a time that was really critical for her. And she is now living the life that she really wanted to live. So the longer I waited to do the work I was meant to do, there are all these people out there who aren't going to be helped in quite the same way. And we all have, so it's not just about us, right? And about our self-care and handling the depression or the health issues, right? It's also about all those people out there who aren't going to be helped by the products or the services that we have to offer that we're so uniquely qualified to help people with and to make the world a better place.
Yeah. I think that's a really important, I think that's a really important message to realize that. And going back to the selfish thing, it's not selfish to do self-care and to step up to living that larger life and to influence others and to allow them to kind of, by example, live a larger life too. Because I felt like when you're talking about that Motown guy, instead of kind of doing something a bit more predictable, I don't know, and doing a normal job, he stepped up and, it was a he, wasn't it?
Yeah, Berry Gordy.
Yeah, stepped up and, shared this amazing gift with the world and affected so many people. And I feel like a part of that is really stepping into that kind of potential, your own potential to make a difference.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, that's what we're here for.
I heard an interview, I think, with Berry Gordy a year or two ago on NPR, and a lot of times when we see people like that, we think that this how easy it was for them, but his life was, in starting that all out, he was kind of he was an iconoclast. I mean, he was one that stood out, and especially in the beginning, it was not an easy life. I mean, I think he had to work, I don't know how many different jobs in order to, kind of fund, that work. But it was something that was really vital to him, and he felt like his I talk about it as if, your heart's calling, but, however you experience that, that desire, that drive to do something that is beyond what's kind of expected, or what the thing that you feel that intellectually or duty wise you feel like you need to do. But if he hadn't listened to his heart and that kind of part of himself to go beyond what was expected, we would have missed out on all that whole that Motown experience and all the other things, all the other people that have a message or an experience to create for other people.
Well, and I think, you talked about how, Berry Gordy's, path wasn't very easy. And I think, especially when you're starting a business, or you're in the middle of, you've been in business, but you're still creating, I think all business owners know this kind of intuitively, that owning a business is a huge personal development project, right? Like, we're on a daily basis, we are always like trying to keep fear at bay and really keep our heads clear and, really take the path that would benefit our business, make the world a better place, benefit our clients, right? And so, just doing that work that you're meant to do is actually a huge act of self-care, right? And managing those voices in our head and really making the world a better place at the same time. But it takes, isn't there a book that was just released? I'm trying to think, the author, I think, is Angela Duckworth. And the book is on the New York Times bestseller list. It's called Grit. And it really isn't related to entrepreneurs at all. It's actually more of an education-based philosophy. But really, that's what's required when you're in business, or you're doing, maybe you're not in business and you're just going for the work you're meant to do, right? Everybody comes up against that fear, and it's like, am I going to listen to that voice of my soul, of what it's calling me to do, that real strong inner nudge? And then as we take that leap of faith, it's a huge personal development project. We learn a lot about ourselves going through the things that we go through to be that creator.
Right. You know, someone posted a question in one of the groups that I'm in, and her question was, what is the biggest challenge that you as an entrepreneur, especially as a new entrepreneur, um, are encountering? And before I like embarked upon this journey that I'm on right now, I thought it was all about, you know, I need to be more uh, book smart, which is really kind of funny with all the education that I have. Um, but it's always about I need to know more. Um, but what I'm experiencing on the other side of actually, you know, getting it started, that it's really more about who I am and who I'm being, and you know, and dealing with that fear and that all that self talk, and it's so much more than about just knowing what to do. Because really, fundamentally, what you do as a business owner, the very fundamentals are very simple. I mean, what you know, what you have to know in order to do it. And I'm not saying that, you know, there isn't a level of education or a level of experience you need to have, but once you have that, the 90% of the game, and I don't remember who said it, but you know, kind of like Woody Allen's thing, that 98% of the game is showing up. But it's more than just, you know, showing up as in being there. It's also showing up in being there. It's not just a location. It's a matter of magnitude. You know, that's so far greater than that.
I feel like you know, all the practices that Connie's been talking about, that we've been talking about today, give you more of that foundation to then step out, because you kind of have that safety, that kind of self-care. To me, that's a kind of safety in my life that I'm, you know, when I do it, that I'm providing to myself. And then based on that, I can kind of extend out into the world and do, you know, what I'm meant to be doing with my life. And with that foundation, it's like it makes that easier for me to do.
Yeah, it's that structure you're creating. It's like, it's almost the embodiment of what you can control in your daily life, right? It's that structure that you're creating. I mean, when I look at my regular day, you know, and how it's structured, it's pretty similar. I mean, the middle is, you know, running my business, but the beginning of the day and usually the end of the day, you know, is where the self-care is built in. And that's what you can control. I mean, that's what you kind of have to lean back on, is that, you know, it's almost like, you know, the sun's going to come up in the morning, right? Whether it's cloudy or not, the sun's still going to be there, right? So it's that structure that really, I think, Jenna, when you were just talking, reminded me, and that's something that we can really depend on when other stuff is going on. You know, we know, okay, you know, I've got this in place. I know this is going to, you know, kind of make things easier, and it's an act of self-care. And yeah, so I think structure is a huge thing too.
You know, that reminds me of a book that I read by Heidi Grant Alberson about, I think it's either Succeed or Success, but she talks about how willpower and so forth is a muscle that when you succeed in one area, and just, you know, doing like these little things that kind of low-hanging fruit, as we called it in our corporate world, that when you accomplish those little things, that it empowers you to do the bigger things. And when you're doing those self-care things that you know that you have some control over, I mean, I know that I can go walk around the block. I mean, I know I can do that. You know, I know that I can do, you know, 15 minutes of meditation, or, you know, I can write or create or whatever my self-care rituals are. It enables me to have the strength to go out and do the things that I'm not so sure that I can do, or that don't have as much direct control over. I mean, part of business is, you know, getting other people to buy into you, and you have a certain amount of control over that, but you also have a certain amount that you don't have control over. So when you do those things of which you have control, it gives you the foundation, like you were talking about, Gemma, of being able to do those things where you don't have as much control. So.
Sure. I was just looking at the time and wondering how long we were going to go for, and also if Connie wanted a chance to briefly have a quick few words about her program. Was it Passion and
Absolutely.
Purpose, 6 Steps to a Career You Love? I think it was called something on those lines. And how people can
Yes,
find
absolutely.
you as well online.
Yeah, so the best way to connect with me about my programs is to go to my website, which is ihelppeoplelovemondays.com.
Mhm.
And they'll actually get plugged into, actually at that website, go into their name and their email. On the next page, they can actually download a free copy of my book, which is called Go Forward Fearlessly, which is perfect for anybody navigating any kind of major life transition, career, business, or otherwise. And then they'll also get notices about, I have a weekly Facebook Live gathering, like tomorrow night I'll be talking at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here in the US in my Facebook group. So the other way to connect with me would be on Facebook by going to the group and asking to join the Passion and Purpose Create a Career You Love community.
Yeah. And your Facebook Live sessions, they go for quite a while, so there's a lot of value in those as well. Because I saw your last one.
Yeah, they go for about an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. And I actually love the interactive component. I mean, obviously here we're on Blab and that's very interactive on a totally different level, but I do like being on Facebook Live and getting people's comments at the same time and answering questions and that kind of thing. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, cool. Well,
So I just put your 2 links in the comments for the chat section there, Connie. So if you would make sure that I put them in correctly.
Okay, I can check those.
So that people can connect. And then, of course, if people want to connect with Gemma and I, one way to do that is through our Heart-Centered Entrepreneurs Facebook group.
yes, join our group.
Anyway,
it's awesome.
Yeah, you guys have a great group. What's the name of your group?
Is it Heart-Centered Entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I just
Heart-Centered
misspelled that. Yeah.
That kind of says it all.
Yeah. It is kind of a mantra, if you will. I cannot type worth anything.
So I just wanted to say thank you to Connie for agreeing to appear in our conversation today.
Well, thank you, Jen.
Yeah,
It was fun to be here.
Thank you very much. You provide a lot of value, so thank you.
Thank you.
Let's all go out and enjoy some self-care. Take care of ourselves so that we can take care of the people in our lives.
Yeah.
Thank you both for your time today.
Take care.
Bye.
All right.